evening, everyone. This is Kevin McPherson. This is HogvilleNET YouTube Live. The plan was to do this from Little Rock Christian Academy. Plans changed. I forgot that I had my drive time radio segment, and they were wasn't enough time to do that. 30 minutes, and then get back into Little Rock Christian and have JJ wait around to do an interview with me on this segment. That was the plan. So I had that green lighted, but again, I had my drive time segment. I didn't want to blow that up. They want to know about JJ Andrews' commitment to Arkansas today. What a roller coaster this has been. It's official. I was there at LRCA Warriors Arena, really nice facility over there. Got there early, put a little video, some content out when JJ showed up, and it has been a whirlwind. When I came on for the longest, we've talked about this decision date coming up. I said if NIL was close or equal, and Arkansas wasn't necessarily way out in the lead there, but if it was close or equal, this is a no-brainer Arkansas Razorback situation. We talked about the legacy with his dad, Sean Andrews. We talked about the fact it's Calipari, it's an in-state kid, the family's in-state, all of that stuff. Having a public ceremony, it just almost never happens, but there is a precedent for Chris Moore a few years ago committing to Auburn at a public ceremony in-state. So we talked about how rare that is. On Pig Trail Nation, my segment on Sunday, we take those Sunday evening, Sunday late afternoon, and I was asked on a scale of 1 to 10, what is Arkansas's chances with JJ Andrews? And I said, well, if you put me on the spot, scale of 1 to 10, I say 8.5 Arkansas. We did one of these segments that was Sunday. That aired on Sunday. Then on Monday, I did one of these, HogvilleNET YouTube Live, and went back through all the talking points. Looks good for Arkansas. I've got, we've talked several times. I had one source than two that thought it was Arkansas. Went through all the same spiel that you always worry about NIL. Could somebody jump up? We did that segment Monday at like 2:15. Fast forward to Tuesday. I'm driving to Oklahoma City for Thunder and Denver Nuggets. I'd already gotten a call late Monday night with some scuttlebutt around the folks, talking to folks in the Brad Bill Elite group, with ties to Missouri, that Missouri had upped its NIL, and they thought they were in the best position at that point. The coaching staff over there, and they thought they were the leader then in NIL, and that was going to be enough to sway it. That's why they made the move. So I got more on that Tuesday during the drive, and that's when I pulled over the next time to get gas, put a tweet out, hey, I'm coming on live. I'm going to do it live from the Paycon Center. That was really the plan anyway. But I didn't know I was going to be talking about that. And so that's what we talked about. So we went through all that. If that's true, I didn't hear anything about he's committed to Missouri. We didn't talk in those terms. We just said source information is Missouri has made the strongest NIL offer now. This is always a concern. And that the Missouri people feel good about it. Their coaching staff feels like he's going to end up being at Missouri. Well, if you remember, I also told you that during the drive, after I got that information, I called one of my basketball buddies that I talked to in Arkansas just to share the news, because I couldn't look around social media or check anywhere to see if there's any scuttlebutt, anybody else talking about this. And he said, well, I haven't looked, but I will right now. And so while we were on the phone, he checked and he goes, oh, I just found something. There's an image floating around of Eric Bossy, one of the lead recruiting analysts over there for 247 Sports, is saying that he's hearing it's Missouri, and he's telling people on the Missouri pay board, or one of the pay boards, I don't know exactly where he got it. He eventually sent me an image of it, texted it to me, but I was driving again. And I was busy that night with other stuff. I had a radio segment Tuesday night with drive time that I did one of these, and we talked a little bit about this. So yesterday, going and interviewing Calipari, we did another one of these following up with that. And we just kind of ran back through this, where the last we heard and where it stood. So you're really nervous. I went from 8.5 on a scale of 10. I think either the Tuesday or segment last night, I said, maybe closer to 50-50. And who knows how this plays out. I don't know if Arkansas had enough range or wiggle room in that NIL offer to then get where Missouri is, or was it even a fact that Missouri was truly in the lead? That's what's coming from one place. So got some really good news this morning. And I was told, look, man, this is going to work out. And I'm going to tell you what this boiled down to. I just talked about it on Drive Time Sports. We're going to do it here. I went out to social media and put it is a Good Day, one of my favorite songs, one of my hype songs from Ice Cube. I'm old school. I'm old. one of the OGs in rap, right? It was a good day, so I put that out. A little cryptic, I guess. Then I followed up with a Baby Billy gif, celebrating, excited. I'm a big fan of the Righteous Gemstones. I reference it all the time on here. Y'all know that. So I did that, because I couldn't come out and spoil it and put, but I did go to the HogvilleNET message board on both the jump ball and basketball recruiting forums, and I put on there, look, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster the last couple of days. I feel good about this. I didn't come in and say he's a hog. I'm just not going to let something like that be screenshotted and put out under my name. But it was solidified. And what I was told this morning, that the NIL stuff aside, the last 3 weeks of this recruitment, it was the John Calipari personal touch, his effort, his devotion in this recruiting process. What have I been telling y'all for a while? That Arkansas feels good about this, and they feel like they made him a priority. They will have a valuation range, and they're not going to get in a bidding war. But at the end of the day, they feel good about where they were at. Well, it wasn't always that way. All the stuff lined up to make it make sense, but this push in the last 3 weeks is what shifted it in favor of Arkansas. That's what I'm told. And so kudos to John Calipari. We talk about him in general terms, in the sense of being the greatest recruiter of all time. And, he's just, you picture the Godfather and everybody's coming to him, asking for favors and, hey, you come to me, kiss the ring kind of thing. Not in a negative way, but he's earned that. That's kind of the persona. But guess what? The guy works. He was doing the work. I won't tell you what all went into it. Some of that stuff I was getting back, but he wants to operate in darkness. I wasn't going to share those details other than to kind of encapsulate it with the staff feels really good about their effort, how they prioritized him, all those things. At the end of the day, it's always, in my opinion, scary if another team's better than you in NIL and making promises based on those NIL numbers. And we saw it with Muhammad Silla, a different scenario, not as highly rated guy, not an Ain State guy, but Calipari's been consistent with everybody. I have a range, I have a ceiling on that, and I'm not going to go wild to beat another deal. Other things mattered here. And at the end of the day, I don't know if Arkansas was on par, close to it. My guess is it was, and the role envisioned. I did a quick interview with JJ immediately after he announced it. Now, look, the ceremony was to start at 4 o'clock. It took a little bit, introduction, some stuff, and a national, I think it was Sports Center Next or one of those outlets went ahead and put out the commitment announcement, and the flood of announcements came out. He hadn't announced anything yet. I was looking at it on my phone on social media when everybody and their dog who wasn't there was trying to get ahead of it and get theirs out. That just happens. You don't, you see the first domino, everybody falls in, but he hadn't made any announcement. Of course, I knew he was going to do it, but at that point, you're just waiting for the young man to have his moment. So I waited, did all that, but it was really cool how he did it. He had a video screen set up. It's all Razorback stuff on the video played. He unzipped his jacket. He had a Razorback t-shirt underneath. I've tweeted out video for all of this. He led the hog call. I interviewed him. It was a brief, real quick interview because he had a lot of people to hug, thank, take pictures with. And so I asked him 2 or 3, probably 3 questions. The first thing I asked is, what does it feel like to be a hog? And he said, look, it feels great. Let's go get this natty. That's the first thing he said. He talked about Calipari and the vision Calipari had for him, and that was what cinched it and what sold him. I just told you the intel. I gave you intel. The last 3 weeks is what buttoned this up for Arkansas, and it was all on Calipari and his efforts on top of whatever the entire staff was doing in concert with Calipari. At the end of the day, it was the Hogfather that made this happen. And again, you can have different ideas and romanticize how it all plays out Godfather style, but sometimes you got to roll your sleeves up and go get it done. And that's what he does, man, whatever it takes. And so I think it's great. I think JJ's excited. I asked him, I said, guys like Carter Knox, Billy Richmond III, similar position as you, guys before them that Calipari had the track record. How did that play into it? He was all over that. He is absolutely. So, brief interview, about a minute long. It was good stuff though. He was excited. If you haven't seen it already, go check it out. It's on my Twitter account, as well as I've already posted it to my commitment article over at HogvilleNET. And that's out for your perusing interest if you have it. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Once again, I'm Kevin McPherson. Big commitment day for Arkansas. The roller coaster didn't have to be a roller coaster if not for the news that Missouri was really, really trying to push this back in their favor by upping the NIL offer. And we've seen this happen so many times. It happens. You see players commit and decommit for a variety of reasons. It's not just about the money they're offered, but if they can get the same money in a better role somewhere else, or more money because the bigger role is going to correlate with more money, everything else is just, it's kind of off the table. You have to, I mean, as good as Calipari is at getting guys to the next level and in-state stuff and the legacy and all that, you still got to make it make dollars and cents and be somewhere in line with that. I had an assistant coach with a high major program after all this broke call me on the way back. I just got off drive time, was settling in, getting here at home to do this segment. And I had a high major assistant coach call me and wanted to talk NIL about JJ and some other five-star players in the 2025 class that went to his school, and they were over $1 million price tag. That's the reality, even for high school, for a lot of high school freshmen. JJ Andrews now, was a top 15 rated 5-star at ESPN's rankings until recently. They moved him down to 22nd. They got him now slotted as a 4-star, but he's going to have a chance to earn his way onto that McDonald's All-American into that game and maybe recapture some 5-star status. But, there are huge NIL packages even coming with some of these players. We know Nate Immense, when I heard his NIL offer, I was floored by it. It was immense. And it was greater than some of the other ones I heard from other freshmen in that class. So I'm sure Arkansas came correct on NIL. It doesn't mean that another school like Missouri, like I heard, wasn't prepared to do more and offered more to try to win it in the end. That's recruiting. It's crazy. And so I went from feeling great to not sure to back to feeling great early today. And, it's a good thing. It's good information. And so, the way I see this now, what is Arkansas getting? What is the value in this player? What is the quality of this pickup? I've said it all along. I mean, I've covered him more than anybody that talks about players in Arkansas. You got a lot of talking heads out there, and they kind of borrowing from people that actually go out and see this stuff. I mean, I've seen him in every setting since 8th grade, practices, workouts, spring and summer grassroots at every level, high school, state title games, high pressure situations throughout his career. He'll be a senior next year. He's still on the grassroots circuit. He's on his way to Memphis this evening. Got a game at 3:00 tomorrow on the Nike EYBL circuit. Session 1, this is the first live eval period. Session 1 a few weeks ago out in Arizona, I think, was not a live eval period. This is the first one this weekend, but 3 games, 19.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2.3 steals, shot nearly 72% from the field, including 50% from 3. So already off to a really solid start for Brad Bill, is really the leader on that team. He was a year ago. He's that again. Had a great run leading that program to the Nike Peach Jam E16 championship last summer in July. That's right after, at that time is when Calipari offered him the scholarship. To Arkansas. Remember, he also took his official visit at the end of December. He was there for a home game against Oakland. He'd originally had one scheduled a little bit sooner during football season, and rescheduled that and wanted to, go to a Hog basketball game. Thought it was really cool. He was also in Little Rock in December for the Little Rock game against UCA. And we, got photos of him, tweeted those out while he was there. But what kind of player is he? Aside from all this attention and back and forth with Calipari, the staff, and him, and coming to Arkansas and it leading to this point, he's one of the most relentless competitors I've ever seen just to win a play. Let alone, he's not thinking about, I'm chasing stats, I'm trying to look good out here by doing this or proving this. He's proven that a 50-50 ball is as valuable as a made bucket, because it's going to lead to a make bucket, whether it's for him or somebody else. An offensive rebound. He's wonderful, a great lefty slasher, 6'6", 215. He's going to blow up when they get him on a weight program in college. Chiseled, sturdy, strong, great lefty slasher. But when he drives to the basket, if he doesn't finish immediately, he's so quick back off his feet, you get back for that offensive rebound, whether it's falling his own miss or somebody else's. He's diving to the floor for 50-50 balls. He's hustling on defense, not just to stay in front of his guy and his man, but to help on defense and then recover in transition. This guy is a big motor, but it's about winning plays with him. And you when you start stacking winning plays at both ends, it impacts winning. You know, and he can go score. I mean, he was a guy that was averaging 30 plus points and 10 or 11 rebounds per game at Little Rock Christian this year. I went through his stats after session one on the Nike EYBL circuit a few weeks ago. But this is a five-star caliber guy, regardless of where the rankings have him right now. And I don't really throw those things around unless I mean that. I've seen him enough to be able to feel qualified enough to say that, and I see a lot of players. I'll stack him up against guys rated higher than him. It's kind of similar to Moses Moody. Moody was a five-star. For various reasons, they slipped him down. He also played at Bradville Elite, same program. They didn't have, because of COVID, his class didn't have a McDonald's All-American game, but they did select a team. He wasn't selected. And I knew for a fact this guy's a five-star quality. He's going to be, he'll move ahead of the guys ranked higher than him when it comes to NBA draft and those kind of things. All of that played out. And I feel similarly about JJ in terms of there aren't however many guys that some of these services have ranked ahead of him. There's just not a whole lot that are actually better than him and that can help you win. Calipari is going to get his share of five-star guys. This won't be the only high-level top 25 rated player Calipari identifies in this class. We've talked about a lot of them that are currently ranked in the top 10 that are going to take visits to Arkansas, at least a handful. We've gone through those names. But JJ's in the same conversation with that level of how he can help you. He's been a consistent member of the Team USA junior national team, mini camps and those things. Was at one recently in the spring during the Final Four, so back in early April, but I went through his credentials, Gatorade Player of the Year. I didn't even mention that since we've been on here for nearly 17 minutes. Arkansas High School Gatorade Player of the Year as a junior this past season. So he'll be back at Little Rock Christian Academy for his senior season. He'll obviously be the front runner to do that back-to-back years and be the Gatorade State Player of the Year again. That's probably a likely outcome for that. He was the MVP again as a sophomore of this 4A state title game and was on back-to-back state title winners. Last year, no. They moved up from 4A, Little Rock Christian did, to 5A. They didn't make the playoffs and lost to the eventual state champion, Benton, in the 5A state tournament. And I think in that, he had like a 40-point game, 41 points or something like that in that playoff loss, so tournament loss. So J.J. Andrews is the bloodlines are, you remember if you know Sean Andrews at Arkansas, yeah, he was an offensive lineman. He was one of the most athletic, dancing bear, really talented players for a lineman. And you see guys like that with great athleticism and agility and foot quickness and all that stuff. Even sometimes when they're, big beefcakes up there playing on the line. He's one of those guys. He comes by it honestly. JJ does. I mean, that's an athletic family. Stacy Andrews, his uncle, played basketball and football and played at Ole Miss. Well, I think he started out at Ole Miss playing basketball in the SEC. Stacy Andrews, Sean's brother. I mean, it's a sports playing family. They're all big and athletic and talented. So JJ, I mean, he's coming from those high major bloodlines, man. But he also comes from a family of pros and family of, men that have done it at the highest level. His mom was a college athlete as well. So, to say anybody's a can't miss, you can never say that until you see it with your own eyes and how it plays out. But this is as good as a player coming out of Arkansas as we've seen in a minute. Isaiah Seeley, class of 2025, already a future Hog, signed and sealed and delivered in November and moving on campus later this month to be part of the next team. A really good basketball player. I mentioned the other day on the segment after I got, when I was on my drive to Oklahoma City, another call I had was a trainer who reached out and said, hey, I worked out Isaiah Seeley last night in Springdale, among other players. Some other D1 guys. I won't go through all their names, but Isaiah Seeley was the headliner. Said he saw a lot of really good stuff. I've talked to I have several NBA scout sources, and one of them that I follow up with all the time about players not only from Arkansas but everywhere. He saw Isaiah Seeley play down in Dallas a couple of years ago and fell in love with him. Said Seeley looks like a future pro to him if he can continue to develop, get stronger. He has attributes already 2 years ago, as I guess a high school sophomore at that point, where he was seeing things that led him to believe he had a chance to be an NBA player someday. And that's coming from a scout. So Arkansas, Calipari identified the right guys in the state at this time. Someone on the crawl, I didn't see who it was, asked me about Jacob Lanier, also class of 2026. I recently reported to you guys a few segments ago that Arkansas is still keeping tabs on him. Lanier's been playing out of state. DME Academies, where he finished up this past year, his junior season. 6'5" guard that had played at Maumelle. DME Academy after starting out at Arizona Compass Prep. And not too long ago, I was told, and I reported it here, that Arkansas is still keeping tabs on him. Really a soft skill guy, a knockdown shooter from three. Can give you some combo minutes. Good passer, good high IQ. But another talented guy. We'll see what happens there. And if Arkansas continues to pursue him for class of 2026 at some point, we know that Arkansas is in on a lot of high octane top 10, again, rated 5-star guys, and a lot of guard wings types in that mix. And now J.J. Andrews off the board. It's a great start. Second in-state player again, including Sealy, to commit to Arkansas. And really, when I think about it now with the high school parts, every year, it's been guards and wings. We're still at guards and wings. I know Kareem Artel technically is a 3-4 or a 4 at 6'9". He's not a high school kid, though. He comes in, he's a freshman. He'll be a freshman in this upcoming Razorback team, right? Class of 2025 freshman, technically, but not a high school guy. Everybody out of high school that Calipari's brought here so far has been a 1, 2, or 3. Interesting, right? You got off to a great start there again. So you don't want to, we've also seen Calipari in his 4 total so far portal additions. When you go back to his first class, Nellie Davis and Jonas Adu, and then you look at Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle, 3/4 so far then of those 4 players in 2 recruiting cycles out of the portal, 3/4 so far have been 5-spot guys. You're 5, you're center. Now, we could say, well, wouldn't Adu Thero and DJ Wagner and Big Z portal? They were retention. They had to technically go portal because Cal came from Kentucky to Arkansas. Those were retention pieces. But, so if you want to stretch that to say, oh, McPherson, you're crazy, that those were portal guys. No, but I'm just saying, if you see some patterns here, it seems like so far, and it may just be coincidence, that Calipari focuses in, he talked last night, 4x4x2, the 4 retention pieces, the 4 high school or freshmen, counting Artel, coming in, and then the 2 out of the portal. But there's, is it coincidence or is there a pattern here? The high school guys are really talented, high level, high quality guards and wings. And the retention part is what it's going to be. Who can you keep? And that's been a mix. It's been a mix of several positional guys, but portal so far has been mostly outside of Nellie Davis, really been frontline 5-spot guys. So, maybe there's we'll see if there's any trends with the 2026 class, but so far the trend is upheld if it is one, right? Again, J.J. Andrews, a wing. So Andrews, I think it was the Nike Elite 100 camp a year ago. It was one of the camps was measured without shoes, and I believe he measured at 6'6". So some folks list him at 6'7" or close to 6'6". They might have rounded it up. Some list him at 6'7" or 6'6". We'll see. We'll probably get another read on that at some point. But he's a good size again. I'll compare him to Carter Knox. Maybe not as thick and solid right now, but cut. I mean, he's shredded. He's but maybe not as much body mass right now as a Carter Knox. Probably not too far away. Maybe very similar there. And the other thing is, I've kind of talked about his accolades and some of the things that he's put together on his resume. One thing I want to bring up again, he went to a camp, I think it was last summer. It was the Formula Zero. I believe that's Dame Lillard's camp, and he was got one of the awards out there. I think it was like the dog or the heart or the hustle award, something like that. And it fits to a T what I always say about him, and some of the things I was just talking about. And one of the interesting things was that event was attended by NBA scouts, a different scout than the one I was talking about that, like Sealy, a different scout that I talked to after being out there reached out to me after he saw JJ a couple of times out there and said, "Man, I love this guy. This dude's a winner." He said, "I love JJ Andrews, an NBA scout." So Calipari knows what he's doing. Again, he focused on Sealy in 25, JJ Andrews now in 26, in-state guys. When he came to Arkansas a little over a year ago, he said, "I will find the ones that can help us, and I'm going to recruit them." And so here's the next one. And I'd love at the end of the day, I'm not going to bust out and ask anybody in his family or any of the player. I'm not going to come out and say, "Let's talk NIL money." I just don't do that. I have to get that stuff sourced. And then when I do, I never really I think I've rarely, if ever, shared what some of those numbers are. For the most part, no. I'm just not going to do that publicly. And so sometimes I get numbers, I'm able to verify them, or I get different answers on things. This is one I'll probably pursue to try to figure it out. At the end of the day, if Mizzou was a little bit better, it didn't matter. And I thought Mizzou or LSU would have to be a lot better for it to matter, but maybe they would be. That was the unknown. And so the job Calipari did, we circle back to that now. Outstanding. And that's the, coming from as good a source as I can think of on this here and how he closed this. He put in the work, and that's what it takes, and that's why he's the best. So if you're a Razorback fan, I think you should be excited about this edition. You're off. I know people are still looking back at the roster, and we went through a segment last night and quoted John Calipari. I asked him the tough questions in the media scrum. He answered them about Boogie, about roster, and what are they going to do next after getting Carter back, or if they get Carter back, or if they don't. And he's down to, hey, we did pretty good with 6 or 7, and less is more. And there's truth to that. There's also truth. We said several things could be true at once. There's also truth to you're dangerously thin on the front line again. You don't have 3-point shooting answered with college experience. Something that was a problem last year could be a bigger problem this year. Several things that are also true that could be addressed later. We've said in so many of these segments for weeks before Calipari spoke on the record with me yesterday and other reporters here in Little Rock, that the staff was letting me know, behind the scenes, and we came on here and said it, we may be done, or it has to be someone special, or it has to make sense. So the talking points didn't really change with Calipari yesterday. But what we've always said too is, if they're wanting to operate under the dark cover of night, cloaked in secrecy, and they're still got to get their players on campus. They still got to wait for Carter to get out of the draft. They've got to look at maybe other players they were maybe consider that are in the draft process, see what they're going to do. You got a lot of stuff to sort out. Get guys on campus at the end of the month. Get them started in summer session 1. Get them in limited practice. Calipari has a history of landing guys late. We've talked about that a lot. You go down the line. Trey Mitchell, Antonio Reeves was a pro decision. Trey Mitchell landed, just kind of landed in his lap. A lot of this stuff played out much later. And once you're in the process with your team, some of that stuff, an addition later might just land better for everybody. Might not, but you'd like to get everybody in. I'm not saying that they're being, manipulative about the situation, and that's definitely what they're going to do, but you have to leave that out as a consideration. We talk about it all the time. But we also talk about they just might be done. Are they going to add, if they get Carter Knox back, are they likely to add another big name kind of player? I think that's less likely. I think what's more likely is 1, maybe 2 more. And could it be a combination of someone that could give you quality depth with some. All right, we just had another. So this is 2 days in a row where I'm seeing a disconnect. I don't operate on my Wi-Fi down here in the Razorback room in the man cave. I go off my data or whatever plan, and it's really not usually a problem. You have a glitch there, but the night I switched over to Wi-Fi. It's the first time I've operated off Wi-Fi down there, and we just also had a disconnect. So I don't know what's going on, but it's 2 days in a row. So for a second, my apologies. So we'll see how they finish out the roster. Maybe they split the baby, and maybe they get an experienced shooter that's got backcourt experience on the college level. Not a guy that has to have a huge monster role, but it's going to factor in somewhere, give you some minutes, and give you an answer when you need to stretch the floor or need to put a shooter out there. and then a back end piece to give you some depth on the front line, and maybe they're more development, just emergency. Or flip that scenario, maybe a more proven 4 spot or 4-5 combo guy that doesn't have to be a starter, and maybe a guy that doesn't have that's more developmental but can shoot a little bit. And you may be looking at him to help you the following year in retention, but he's here and can go now and help you on a need, maybe like a Joseph Pinion did as a freshman. I mean, there's more than one way to do it if you add one or two. But again, we may be in a situation we're not adding any more. If you're John Calipari saying we're done. I know people are looking at the Boogie Fland saying, well, isn't that an answer right there? Look, Calipari gave, the politically correct answer, the things he continues to say. Hey, we're going to support Boogie. We will, and me. I love coaching him. We'll do whatever, and we'll see how it plays out, that kind of stuff. Look, I'll call this, I guess, a nugget of intel. That news on Boogie broke on Tuesday. When I kept talking about traveling to OKC, a lot of stuff was going on. And I was just arriving there when the Boogie stuff, I'm pulling out of the draft. That was Tuesday early evening, right around 5 o'clock, 4:30, 4, whatever, somewhere in that stretch. And so we talked about that night. We talked about it again yesterday. We're talking about it again because even though Calipari said what he said in a candid conversation with some folks on Tuesday, the day before we had him in Little Rock. So where was he Tuesday? He was in Memphis, right? We had him in Little Rock Wednesday. We got him on the record with what he said. But in a candid conversation with a few folks, I don't know the timeline, but it was sometime after it just came out in the evening that Boogie was coming out of the draft and coming back to school. And in a candid conversation, he was asked about it with a group of people. And what got back to me was Calipari said, we're kind of crowded there in the backcourt and with what our plans are. That's what he said. Take it for what it's worth. Does that mean he had time to contemplate everything? And that's just how it's going to be. It's kind of what I thought going into it, not what he said, but I've been saying it's kind of crowded for what those guys all are and what their specialties are and what they're trying to maximize. When you talk him, DJ, and A-Cuff, it gets real crowded there. Just because Calipari said that in the moment, that might have been where they were thinking he was going to stay in the draft, and they felt good about his draft process, and they weren't going to have to worry about it. And he hadn't had a chance to, calculate now that he knows he's back. Talk with his staff, talk with Boogie. All that can change everything. I'm just trying to give you information as I get it. I thought you'd like that. I know we're kind of late in the show to be doing that, 33 minutes in, but this was about J.J. Andrews. I wanted the first half hour at least or close to it to be about him. This is a big day for him. But we're talking Hog basketball. So that got back to me what Calipari said. That was his some initial feedback from him. The scuttlebutt is Florida's probably the leader there. We talked about it yesterday. Who knows what happens if that's really true? Maybe it is. It sounds like it might be. I don't know that for a fact. People I talk to say they all keep hearing it. So, there's some thought, well, maybe Arkansas going to find a way to decide and figure out how to make it work and get him back. Hey, if Calipari thinks he can do that and make that work and make everybody happy, I'm all for that. I'm all in. Do it. Get him and Carter back. Come on. You talk retention, that'd be retention. Now, you got a guy that's just left the draft process where he probably could have eked out a two-way deal or some kind of back-end guarantee. But the money, if he's got something done with Florida, that $7 million thing, I don't believe that. $5 million, I don't. But it's going to be a lot if it's whoever it is. And if it's Arkansas, they're going to have to pony up and figure that out. They're also going to have to figure out how they're going to keep him happy with the role he expects. Because why are you coming back to school if not to position yourself for lottery and first round this time next year? And how do you do that? You need the ball in your hands for what he does. He's not an off-the-ball player. He's a lead guard. Look at his assist-to-turnover numbers. Look at the volume, not just the efficiency and how he took care of the ball and how he set players up, but look at the volume of assists. He's one of the top facilitators in the country. When you looked at Arkansas, despite the losses in 5 games, to start league play. I think there was a myriad of things on that. I don't lay that all on Boogie or most of it on him. But if you really looked at it, even when he came back in a different role, when he was on the ball, and it was in the game, there were fewer turnovers in those stretches. Kind of odd, wasn't it? Remember the self-imploding Hogs and those bad self-inflicted wound stretches? That stuff settled down a little bit the more he was on the floor in a couple of those games. So again, here's a guy that wants to run it. Acuff is brought here, being told this guy's going to the NBA. This is your job. DJ's been on board for 3 years with Cal now. They're paying him handsomely to do it, and they had a plan for him to co-author that backcourt and as a kind of a combo. He was more successful on the ball once Boogie went out, and he was that primary guy. That creates another big question mark already. If you don't bring back Boogie or some other guard that wants to have the lion's share of the minutes on that ball. Okay, again, we talked about it yesterday. I'll do it again. Going back to the Kentucky days, just Cal's last year there and all those guards. You had one guy that couldn't shoot and three that could. They all could play on the ball, generate offense because they were all multiple to shoot from three, create their own shot, or facilitate. You shifted guys off the ball with DJ playing the one. Everybody was an elite three-point shooter. They didn't have to create after they got the ball. So whether they were, running off screens in the floppy sets, the traditional floppy, the diamond set, all those things Calipari likes to run, or whether they were camping, on a wing, waiting for their turn, or they were setting a screen and then moving off of that, or standing in a corner. They had three guards that were rotating with DJ on the one spot that could shoot. So you got one guy setting them up and three guys capable of knocking them down. You can make things like that work and give everybody minutes and feed everybody. Do you feel as good about DJ and Acuff and Boogie and Malik, maybe high volume guy coming out of overtime elite, unproven? It's unproven how it's going to work at the SEC level, the Division I high major level. 38%. It all looks good. You hope it does. I'm not saying it won't, but I don't know that combination of four makes as much sense as that other combination did. And they also had a different offensive structure that final season. They had a guy that came in and helps run all that. That Welsh, I can't remember his first name, Tim or Jim or John Welsh. And then he ended up, when Calipari came to Arkansas, he didn't follow him to Arkansas. So either way, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be negative about it. I'm trying to talk about things that would make basketball logic or illogic, however you want to slice it. Because the retention part, great. You'd be getting a hell of a lead guard. You know that he's capable of being a three-point shooter. Boogie definitely has the chops to improve there. There's a lot of good things about it. And the other part is, though, how are you going to parse that out with playing time and roles for everybody? And then is what Calipari said true? Less is more. Sometimes more can be less. You say, oh, that sounds silly. I've seen it happen a lot. I've seen programs that are loading up at different times with all kinds of players that you think, this guy can do this guy can do that. And then it just doesn't work. You get jealousy, you get guys pouting. All those things are real. We could talk about, well, where's the competitive fire? Are you kidding me? You're going to tell Darius Acuff, who you're offering $1 million plus to come to Arkansas, he could go anywhere in the country, the number one point guard, hey man, come down here and maybe get the reins. Maybe. We'll see. You'll compete. You're not telling guys not to compete in practice. Calipari said in his video, the retention video, some young guys are going to still have to compete and win some spots. But you're not recruiting that way and sending that message. You're delivering a major role to guys like that, major roles. And then you figure, then when you get in the trenches, you may have to back off some stuff at some point if it's a disaster. But Boogie Fland, Arkansas was 0-5 in SEC play, and they didn't back off of him. It wasn't a big enough disaster yet. It was an injury. And don't forget, he was actually injured a couple of games before those last two losses. It was the Florida game, which was game 3. He suffered the injury. And so even though he didn't shoot well in league play, he was injured for part of one of those games, of those 5, and then 2 more that he tried to play through it. So we don't really know what he would have been, but he certainly didn't lose his job. And so who are you going to tell they might be losing what they were told? And then what was planned for them? It's not about telling guys not to compete. You're still going to do that. You still know there's other quality players around you. But are you going to load up, 11 deep with, think about what Arkansas's roster looked like 9 deep last year. All high-level guys. The high school players were all top 25 ranked. Somebody had them as a 5-star. The 2 transfer true portal guys, Nellie Davis was the number 1 portal recruit. Jonas Adu, top 10, top 15. The guys he brought with him from Kentucky, DJ Wagner, former top 10 rated 5-star McDonald's All-American. Adu Thero getting first-round draft projections and going into year 3. He's growing by leaps and bounds. He's a physical monster. If he'd have stayed in the portal and not followed Cal, he'd had his pick of the litter, blue bloods. He could have gone anywhere he wanted to. Big Z, okay, you could say, well, how good, But I'm just saying, for the most part, you even brought back Trevor Brazil as your last addition, your 9th guy, who, before he got hurt, Eric Musselman called one of the top 5 players in the SEC. You were loaded. You've got quality everywhere. How much quality can you have without it not making sense? I'm not saying don't go at anybody. I've given the reasons why you should. I just don't know if you bring Boogie back that you don't go through what the cons are, because there's pros and cons. There's a lot of good, but there's also things that could be problematic. If Calipari and his staff decide to shift and to retain Boogie, get him to come back, then they didn't just do that on a whim because they want to keep their guys. Because he has a track record of keeping his guys if they're not going to go pro. We know that. You look at it forever. They had guys that would come in over the years that were projected first rounders. They didn't necessarily pan out. And for the longest time, even a lot of those guys came back to play for him. Now, so the more that the portal became more and more of a thing and players transferred, if it didn't work out in year 1, yeah, you saw some of that. But he's not going to just do that for the sake of keeping one of his guys. He's going to get everybody on board, make sure it makes sense, have a plan, and get everybody on board. It won't just be about, okay, now we got to do this. It won't just be that way. I still think it's probably less likely, knowing this now, that Boogie Fland ends up back in Arkansas. I think he's going to go somewhere where he's not having to compete with 2 other lead guards who are also, getting paid handsome NIL and have been told, we need you and you're going to factor in heavily in what we're doing. I just don't know how you can spread all that out. And if you did that, now all of a sudden, if you said, okay, all 3 of you are getting 30 minutes or whatever, well, you're taking them away from other high-level guys. You're trying to get Carter Knox back. You're trying to use Billy Richmond. You got Trevor Brazil. You got that. It's just, at the end of the day, whether you're 9 deep or 8 deep, that's probably where you need to be with your top quality guys. And so if you added Boogie and you get Carter back, that'd get you to 9. Yeah. But man, again, I say it, just loaded down at that one spot. Nothing against Boogie. I'm one of his biggest defenders. When people rise up and say, you got team DJ and team Boogie, I'm not into all that. I don't hang any of those problem stuff on Boogie. I don't. But at the end of the day, this is about next year and what that looks like. I think Acuff is a guy that comes in. To me, I've said this, he looks like a guy that could be Arkansas's leading scorer, be first team All-SEC. He's got a pathway to that based on just the talent I see. Doesn't mean he's going to do it, but he's got a pathway. You're not going to do that splitting with 2 other guys your lead guard minutes. Again, unless you're really changing your other parts of your plan and how you constructed the roster. Because it wasn't taking into account another guard, or Arkansas would have already brought one in and signed one in the portal, out of the portal. They had their options on a lot of guards if they thought they needed to fill a need there, because they thought Boogie wasn't coming back, right? So, all right, I feel like I've kind of been on a soapbox. I see it both ways. That's the point. I see it both ways. If it was my roster, I'm going to go add 1 or 2 more. And if it's someone that can space the floor and shoot, and they're a higher level guy, and they can give me some wing minutes and maybe that's why I went through Chad Baker-Mazara. I'd still add it. That'd be a splash. It's too late now for him. I'm just saying that would be a splashy type of ad. And I would probably, if it was my roster, probably try to get something like that. And then get a depth piece at the 4. So that's how I would do it. But I understand what Calipari's doing it, how he's doing it. And then it just comes down to, are they really satisfied with what they have? It looks good. It's great retention. The percentages are in their favor, what they're bringing back. A lot of talent, a lot of strengths. We've identified the weaknesses, but, can you patchwork that? Can you make it work? If he does, they've been kind of telegraphing and telling us they are. The only other thing is they're just trying to get through the next few weeks, get the NBA draft stuff settled out. Certainly make sure Carter's coming back. It looks like he will. Just make that official. See what else is out there, and then get everybody on campus and kind of get the ball matriculating again with the limited practices and summer sessions, and then, sneak something in later. And maybe that could be a splash, or maybe just, again, depth pieces. So either they're done or they're kind of maybe slow play it even more, and the talking points give them wiggle room. Because what else did Calipari say? He gave the virtues of less is more, but he also said we might add one. Remember, I gave y'all source information a few weeks ago, a conversation with someone that helped deliver a player to Arkansas. The coaching staff said we're looking to add one more. Bring that back up. So, and that was after all the brake pumping, like a day or two before on the Chad Baker Mazar thing. And then I was hearing no on Jameer Watkins and PJ Haggerty. Who knows? It's no, maybe it's either no forever or no for now. And that's kind of where I'm going with that. Let's obviously focus in on it, and we'll drill down on more details as we get them. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I want to remind everybody, I will be in Memphis this weekend to cover the live Nike EYBL session, the first live eval opportunity for Division I coaches. I expect to see Arkansas coaches there at different times throughout the weekend. They'll also fan out around the Midwest and the country where some of these other grassroots events, it's not just about Nike EYBL, that's the biggest and best, but you've got the Adidas 3SSB in Council Bluffs, Iowa, near Omaha, Nebraska, that area. I believe the Puma Next 16 event is in Wichita, Kansas. And then I'm not sure where Under Armour is. I meant to check on that, and I still not sure. They'll have their event, Under Armour Association. And so Arkansas coaches will be out for that. And so we're going to get a lot of content on more class of 2026. What a great start to it, though. J.J. Andrews off the board. He's a Razorback. That happened today. I was there. The excitement in the room in the foyer there, in the lobby of the Warriors Arena here in the 501. J.J. Andrews, ESPN number 22 ranked player, prospect, high-level 4-star, 6'6" wing, outstanding player. I think this is a great start for John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks in that 2026 class. We're going to bring more on those high-level guys over the weekend, as well as some class of 2027s, maybe even some 28s. I may be back on tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what time I'm traveling over to M-Town, not just down the street here from Little Rock. You know that. If I'll be on tomorrow or what time, but I'll be on probably multiple times throughout the weekend. But until next time, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.